Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Futures Sydney 2026. I want to welcome everyone who's joining us here today. And we have some special guests as well, some non-members who have made some a long trip and some maybe a short trip. And I want to thank you very much for joining us today. And we have guests from Saudi Aramco, Mitsui, Advanced Optical Communications, Bradfield Development Authority, Elasticsearch, Sync, LEK Consulting, Incepto, Parade Warrior, and maybe others that I've missed, so I apologize if I have. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. We also have some members of the media here, and so thank you as well for joining us in this open forum. So I want to start by first giving you a quick, I guess everyone knows what the Wi-Fi, I'm not sure if everyone uses that anymore, but if you need the Wi-Fi, there you go. And I also want to thank our sponsors for the event, and you can see the names here for our sponsors as well as our exhibitors. So in case you weren't aware, down the hall and to the left, we have some exhibitions of some solutions from some of our members of the IOWN Global Forum, and they're really looking forward to speaking with you. So if you have a chance at the end of the afternoon, please make your way to the end of the hallway. So let me talk quickly about today's agenda, and you know, we can't start any event without talking about challenges, and there are many in the world today, whether they're geopolitical, environmental, technological, and don't worry, we're not going to go into all of those. We're going to focus today on the technological challenges and opportunities in our industry. And of course, a lot of that has to do with the way AI is now becoming part of everything we do, whether it's the power that it consumes or the power we need to generate for delivering those AI solutions, whether it's the red lines that they're creating and how it's being used, and a number of different ways that AI and this whole question of where's technology going into the future. And today's session is really to dive into what can we as members of the industry and specifically as members of the IOWN Global Forum help to contribute to some of these challenges. Now, it's become clearer and clearer that there's a need for an evolution, if not a revolution, in the infrastructure that is going to serve us into the future. And more these days, it's becoming obvious that one of the key enablers of that is going to be photonics. It's really that transition from electronics to photonics, which is going to be one of the key enablers to the AI infrastructure of the future. And today's session is really touching a lot about how is that going to deliver what we need going forward. And so this event is really bringing together thought leaders from the industry, from enterprise, from academia, from think tanks, with the thought leaders who are really going to focus on what's going to be possible in the future for networks and data centers and infrastructure to deliver the AI that we need going forward. And we hope today you gain a lot more insight into how photonics is going to revolutionize infrastructure for many different industries, whether it's telco or financial services, data centers, media. And we really hope that after the session, we're going to have a networking event, and you'll learn from others as you're here some of the things that are happening in the electronics to photonics revolution that's happening. So Futures is bringing together these ideas. And today, we have a jam-packed session of thought leaders and speakers who are going to deliver some of these messages and hopefully get a lot of interest in this topic. So here's the agenda for today, and you can see we'll kick it off with Dr. Kawazoe-san from NTT Inc., and we'll have that followed up with Gonzalo Camarillo from IOWN Global Forum. We have, unfortunately, had one of our speakers not able to make it. Giovanni Chiarelli is not able to make it due to a family emergency, so unfortunately he can't be here. But Namba-san from MUFG Bank will be here. Olivia Shen will speak, and at the end we'll have a great panel bringing together some great speakers and thought leaders to talk about the AI infrastructure, security, and sovereignty of the future. So a lot of topics. We are, with one less presentation, we might finish a little earlier, but when we do, we have a networking event outside. There'll be some food, some drinks, and some entertainment. So we really look forward to having you stay for that. We won't be having any breaks during this session, so if you need a bio break, please feel free anytime to leave. But since we're going to be, just under 2 hours, about the length of an average movie, hopefully everyone will be able to hang around for the content. So again, thank you all for being here, and let me hand it off to our first speaker, please, Dr. Kawazoe-san.
First, please
A
watch this
world
video.
with minimal energy consumption. The answer to climate change. Create another world. The other me is there. An infrastructure that self-evolves. We can have control over our time. All future paths can be predicted. We can transcend our human potential. IOWN Global Forum. The next evolution, the next world.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katsuhiko Kawazoe, President and Chairperson of IOWN Global Forum. Thank you very much for coming to the Futures non-member newcomer. Welcome. I'm very happy to meet you. Please understand what is IOWN. For easy understanding, IOWN, we aim to realize beyond internet. I think internet can do a lot of things, but now we feel some kind of limit in internet. I hope you to learn more about the IOWN Global Forum through this future session. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are facing many crises, such as COVID-19, climate change, natural disasters, and divided world. To overcome these crises, we have to continue to enhance ICT technologies more and more. As you might aware, we have other big issues. Internet traffic is growing exponentially. Before COVID-19 and after COVID-19, the total volume of the traffic is almost doubled. Therefore, a lot of computers are used to process large amount of data. As a result, energy consumption is skyrocketing now. Optics has wonderful advantage compared with electricity. Even if the transmission distance or frequency increase, the power consumption barely increases. We currently use optical fiber for transmission. On the other hand, it has been difficult to apply optical technology to information processing for a long time. Then in 2019, NTT finally succeeded to invent the world's first optical transistor. We succeeded to realize about 90% power consumption reduction by this transistor. This innovation was the origin of IOWN. IOWN stands for Innovative Optical and Wireless Network. Toward developing cutting-edge IOWN technologies and global ecosystem, we established this IOWN Global Forum in 2020. IOWN is next-generation optical-based communication and computing infrastructure and consists of a variety of technology elements. The performance target of IOWN are 100 times higher energy efficiency, 125 higher transmission capacity, and 1/200th end-to-end latency. Now about 180 member companies around the world are working together toward this shared vision. IOWN Global Forum member companies come from diverse industries such as technology companies, manufacturing companies, and user companies. Over the past year, we have been actively developed many technologies and involved in presenting a wide range of POCs and use cases. For example, the financial use case is one of the early adoption cases, along with broadcast, remote GPU, and construction, and it will be present later today. These efforts have demonstrated the potential of IOWN technologies. In addition, we are considering emerging use cases with physical AI, such as those involving humanoid robots, autonomous vehicles, and drones. These use cases require more computing resources than before. The demand for data center is growing now. To meet this growing demand for data centers, new companies providing GPU as a service have entered the market. These companies, known as NeoCloud, are rapidly expanding with substantial investment, and various types of cloud providers are now emerging. And we believe that there is a challenge in how we can connect various AI data centers in a low latency and energy efficient way. In June 2025, we launched Release 3 of Open All Photonics Network Functional Architecture. Open APN enables open and standardized optical networking that can dynamically interconnect cloud providers and neo-cloud providers. This approach is highly effective in supporting the rising demand for AI data centers. In February 2026, Open Computer Project, OCP, and IOWN Global Forum has agreed to establish a cooperative framework to advance the AI computing continuum, which enables seamless infrastructure from centralized to edge deployments. Under the framework, we will work together to develop a roadmap for a multi-site, high bandwidth, low latency computer and network infrastructure. Last year, we started the discussion about the fourth pillar of IOWN as part of our vision toward 2030. It's beyond digital. By unlocking the potential of ultimate precise clock and quantum technology. Looking ahead, I believe that we should evolve Open APN or Photonics network into a network infrastructure that not only connects GPUs for AI, but also integrates quantum computers, which are expected to emerge around 2030, only 4 years. In March 2026, ETSI and IOWN Global Forum has agreed to work together on shaping the future of global network standards. Please watch this video.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here and really take the next step in our collaboration. We have enjoyed a collaboration on the liaison level since 2021. The world has changed since then. We have identified that we have common interest and common topics to a much larger extent today than what we maybe had in 2021. So this is really, from an SU point of view, the natural, logical next step to strengthen our collaboration and see how we can jointly drive the technology development and the standardization forward in a joint manner. And exactly what practical activities we will plan, that will be part of the MOU, but there is certainly a lot of opportunities for strengthening our collaboration between the heads of technical committees and the industry specification groups and the corresponding activities on your side. So it's a great pleasure from my side to be here and really take this next step in our collaboration. So thank you very much for our collaboration. I'm looking forward to the next steps.
Okay. Looking for 2030, we need to work on 6G technologies. Unlike previous generations, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G will require not only central performance improvements, but also disruptive innovation will be required, I think. For example, it will be important to collect physical world information in real time and connect it to AI platforms, such as those used for autonomous driving car AI. In short, 6G evolves from human communication network to sensor AI network, I think. In such case, technology in fourth pillar, the ultimate precise clock, will become increasingly important, I think. To create a breakthrough innovation with IOWN, we are focusing on innovation in all activities and adopt new breakthrough technologies as soon as they emerge. Please join IOWN Global Forum to pioneer the future beyond digital limits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kawazoe-san, and always an inspiring speech and talk from him. He literally wrote the book, IOWN Beyond the Internet. It's on Amazon if you're interested, but he co-authored that with, at the time in 2019, before photonics was really understood as the next revolution, and now we're seeing it both now and going into the future, leading into 6G and quantum. So thank you for your leadership. And the IOWN Global Forum has also been a strong leader in this field. And so now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who will give you a little more insight into the IOWN Global Forum, our activities, our future, and some of the things that we plan to do. So with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Camarillo to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vito. Yeah, I think thanks, Kawazoe-san, for the inspiring presentation. And as Vito said, and that's a great segue into my presentation, we're going to see what the current status of optical technologies and our assumptions are, and how they affect basically our future. So let me click here. OK, good. I'm going to explain basically what the forum is about, the structure, how we work, ways of working, and the properties that the forum has. So, for prospective members and potential members, you understand basically what we would be joining. I think it will give you also context into the panel and the keynote speech. So, without further ado, this is what we have been using as our North Star since the beginning. And as you see, Kawazoe-san showed this several times, which is basically the properties that optical network provides you, which is low power consumption, high transmission capacity, and low delay. And if you can see there, we are building the communication network infrastructure for the future. That was from 6 years ago. Today I was discussing if when the forum was founded, and it was exactly 6 years ago. Last year we were going through the 5th year anniversary, and this was basically what we set out to do, to build that infrastructure. As basically Vito was saying, we couldn't imagine the change that AI, basically meant. All our projections on, data, how important would be to have these type of links, they have been blown away. So now with AI, it means that, the importance of the forum is even more, and it stresses that, we were betting on the right horse. This is exactly what we need to basically take the networks into the future. So with that, we had worked 5 years and a half. And since these changes in the environment, we needed to agree on how to move forward the forum. So a couple of months ago in Kyoto, the board of directors of the IOWN Global Forum met and decided how can the forum continue to create value in this new environment? And what you can see there, down there on the slide, is what we agreed on as basically value proposition for the immediate future. And as you can see there, well, you can read it, but I'm going to focus on a few words there. So the first one is that we have a broad ecosystem of thought leaders. Thought leaders, Kawasoe-san mentioned several times, Vito as well. So we are basically getting thought leaders from the ecosystem, and I have another slide on that later. So we will be discussing that. Another interesting thing from how we are intending to create value is the fact that we are connecting photonics breakthroughs, so breakthroughs in technology, with deployment models, integration practices. This means that we connect technology with the market, right? So we are not just a forum about technology. We want to reach eventually deployments, which is our end goal. This is important because the way we connect the market with the technologies is through use cases. And I will be presenting some use cases later, at least a set of them, not all of them, obviously. But when we have a use case, it clearly targeted a market, a specific market. And I will explain later in the ways of working how we do that and how we connect these breakthroughs in technology with these specific market segments so that we can create value in this particular market segment, not just beyond going in general, beyond the properties that I was discussing before. And also, I want to focus on the deployment models, integration practices, blueprints. So the IOWN Global Forum is not an SDO. We don't develop standards. The standards or technologies used in our blueprints, they are typically standardized in SDOs. Sometimes we use de facto standards as well. And it's basically the industry-recognized centers of competence. Venues like IETF, like ITUT, like IEEE, they develop the standards. We put them together in a blueprint to integrate something into a deployment. This is important because then I will be also talking in general on how the IOWN Global Forum fits in the ecosystem, so just keep in mind, we are not an SDO, we are developing blueprints, integration practices, and deployment models. Very important. Moving ahead, as I said, a bunch of thought leaders coming together into a forum. We are growing really rapidly. If you notice, Kawasoe-san was having data from a couple of weeks ago, 176 members. Now we are 180 members. So this is growing all the time. It's really, really great to see more members coming. And the futures session actually is a way to also bring new members to see, if you are interested. And if you are, please join us and help us push in this effort. It's important to see that we have a very diverse membership, and it's in 3 dimensions at least. I want to talk about 3 dimensions. The first one is the global reach. So geography. We have, obviously, and this is a question we always get, the forum is really strong in Japan and in Asia Pacific, but we have also many members from Europe and many members from North America. That gives us access to different geographical markets because you need to understand that different geographies, they have very different markets, and the assumptions that we are making are completely different as well. So it's really key to have members in all these geographies. We have cross-industry perspectives. So for the use cases, we cannot just have people that understand the optical technologies, they build a network, they deploy networks, or they operate a network. In addition to that, we need also what we used to call user companies, which are companies that they are specific or that they are bringing use cases. So it could be a car manufacturer, for example. It could be a crane operator, a mine operator, many of them. So if you see across the industry, we have operators again. Financial services, entertainment, so all these market segments that we are basically interested in. And then the value chain, of course, we actually have from academic, so we have academic members, not doing full research, but usually do applied research, going into basically equipment vendors, infrastructure operators, et cetera, integrators, all that. It's actually interesting because this is what, now I will be talking about the ways of working. It makes it possible because the ways of working is what makes the forum very special, in my opinion. This is just, you will see some well-known logos there. This is the list of our members. And then before I go into the ways of working, Just keep in mind that Kawasoe has been talking about APN, All Photonics Network, and we usually are well known by that technology, right? That blueprint. But the forum works also on ancillary technologies, technologies that complement the APN to build certain types of use cases. Some technologies are specific to a use case, some of them are more horizontal, and they apply to many of them. So just, you may hear about DCI, digital twins, for example. So all that is also coming from the digital forum, from the IOWN Global Forum, in order to support the use cases we have, which are all based on the APN, the IOWN Global Forum All Photonics Network. So that's a clarification because we get a lot of questions about that. Ways of working. As I said, ways of working is actually a key, and if you are thinking of becoming a member, I think this is extremely interesting because this is where the rubber hits the road, how we are developing our blueprints. So the way we do it is, as I said before, we have use cases. So the use cases, they help us identify requirements on the technology. You want to do something, you define a use case, and then that basically ends up being a set of requirements. The requirements, they are translated into blueprints, so that we understand how to build the system, again, how to put together, integrate it, and have something that will be able to basically realize the use case. And then we validate our assumptions. And the way we validate our assumptions is in 3 ways. First of all is proof of concept. So we make sure that technology works. Until we understand that the technology works, this is an iterative process. We will go back to use cases, define requirements, redefine or refine our thinking in terms of how to put together a technology until we have something that is doing what we want to do, technology-wise. But then what makes this forum special is that we don't stop there, but we also do proof of value and proof of business. Proof of value means that the value that we are trying to create for the stakeholders of the use case, it's actually created. So it's not just a technology. No, we are not deploying or developing technologies, blueprints, use cases for the sake of them. We are just trying to create this value. And this is the proof of value. And then the proof of business is to make sure that we are producing that value at the right price point. So it's economically viable. If we are producing some value that is way too expensive, deployments are not going to move there. We need to provide the market with incentives so that these things are deployed. So again, at the end of the day, when we finish that, we finish the 3 validations. The end result, as I said before, is deployments at scale. And this is what we are trying to do eventually with all our use cases. In terms of, we get this question from the press a lot. What have you guys been doing in the last 5, 6 years? So this is just some numbers so that you can see, we've been working on 8 use cases, technical outlooks, functional architectures, etc. So you see, we haven't been idle. There's a lot of stuff produced, and you can find it on the web page, actually. So again, we are trying to go to 2030 and beyond, of course, but we have now the new North Star, as I described before. And then, coming back to the ways of working and how we are developing use cases, again, we start with use cases, requirements, then reference implementation models, and then the proof of concept, value, and business. We divide our use cases in early adoption and future looking. Early adoption means that we have identified a set of use cases that they can be early in the market, so we can use them early to be, basically following the life cycle. And then we have future looking to go more into inspirational use cases, things that we could play around with the technology and do something that is maybe more deployable in the future, but maybe not right now. So I just wanted to give you a taste of the use cases, not all of them again, because, for example, they're going to discuss them in the keynote and in the panel, but at least you understand, what type of services and use cases we are talking about, and I think, giving examples is good. So if you go to the early adoption use cases, you see there financial services. We're going to be talking about them later. Broadcast media, that's broadcast media production, AI implementation, and construction. All the use cases at the end of the day, as I explained before, they use the APN. So the idea is how to use the network in order to implement the use case. And again, why do we need to do that? The reason why we need to do that is that just applying blindly the technology, an APM, to a use case, you will get some benefits, but maybe not all of it. By actually working on an actual use case, you can reap all the benefits that they are there. And as you can imagine, having a fast network like an APN, at the end of the day, everything is about disaggregation. You are disaggregating, two functions that they used to be together. You are basically disaggregating them, and that leads to all type of interesting properties. Sometimes you get centralized approaches. Sometimes you get, distributed approaches. Sometimes you get properties that you don't even expect. And to give you an example, for example, the way we approach this, to work on the financial services use case, we organized a roundtable in London, London being in Europe a center for banks, of course, and financial services institutions. We went there, we explained the use case we were talking about, which is connecting data centers, basically, for financial institutions, and we validated our assumptions. Some of them were validated, some of them were invalidated, because they said, no, look, this is not a pain point for us, so if you solve it, it doesn't create any value. But more importantly, we understood why this could be important. And interestingly enough, it was more about how far you can have data centers so you have access to renewable energy, less expensive areas, so you can go into a rural area and have a cheaper data center, for example, rather than the speed in itself. So really interesting. I'm not going to dwell into that a lot because, again, they're going to be discussing later. But for financial services, it's really important when they have a synchronous replication for bank data, core bank data, transactions. If you're a bank, you cannot lose transactions. So the requirements were very tough, and we are happy to see that we could produce actual value when we met with the stakeholders that they would be eventually deploying this or using this in this case. Broadcast media is when you have, for example, an event, and you are taking video footage with many cameras and all that. So again, this is about disaggregating. So usually you have the production close to the stadium, typically these tracks that you will see outside events like football matches and things like that. So what we are able to do is disaggregate that. The end result is like all the production can basically be centralized, performed in a central area. So that actually gives a lot of flexibility to the media producer in this case to do the production for many events happening at the same time, for example. So again, we are talking about some use cases that they are about decentralizing, others that they are centralizing some functionality. So it's quite interesting. AI implementation is if you have a farm of GPUs and you are using them as a service. So you have and again, it's all data compute, so we are disaggregating, again, two functions that they can be put, split apart, and then you can actually send not all the data so that you have the data and the compute and you train an AI model. You can actually send data as needed, which, it has better privacy properties, confidentiality properties, sovereignty, etc. So it solves a lot of problems that they are not obvious when you think about that just from the network perspective. And finally, the construction use case, which is basically about remote construction. You have environments that they are dangerous for humans. You want to get humans away. So again, it's a disaggregating the control of an excavator, for example. You have the human, far off in a safe place, controlling that. We can also map a mine, for example, if you have a mine or a construction site, and send all the data so that you have a virtual representation. This is a lot of data if you want to have it in high fidelity. And then they can do all type of planning remotely again, but not on site. So extremely interesting. Fiber sensing plays a role there as well, so that you understand what's going on in the construction site. And to conclude, the future-looking use cases, I will not go into them because I'm running out of time. But we are looking into cyber physical systems, digital twins, metaverse, and AI, not surprising, and some approaches for improving industry management. So with that, just to conclude my presentation, this gives you an idea of why the forum was formed and what was our initial North Star, how we have shifted in 5 years down the road, just because we were actually becoming more relevant than we thought it was possible because of the AI and all the properties that it has with higher requirements, and how with that now we are having our ways of working as a competitive advantage basically, and be able to get to final deployments, which is again our final goal. We are not a technology company forum only. We actually go for the market as well. And with that, thank you very much. And Vito, over to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gonzalo, and I realize now I didn't introduce myself. I am Vito Mabruco, so thank you for mentioning my name, and I'm from NTT Inc. And I just wanted to emphasize how important this idea of photonics and all photonics network is. As again, we talk about AI into the future and the applications that Kawazoe-san mentioned, including autonomous vehicles and other types of robotics. And so the idea of photonics in the network and making it an intelligent photonics network for high capacity, ultra low latency, which we're going to absolutely need for the new applications of the future, and also power efficient. Bringing those together is something new. It's not like fiber optics is new. We've had that for 40 years. We have undersea fiber optics. We got fiber optics to the home. It's the intelligence that is being put into the network that is connecting using an all photonics network. And beyond that, one of the ideas behind photonics that was mentioned again by Kawazoe-san is how do we take that to the data center? Because there's transmission in the data center as well. So the future of all transmission is to move from electronics to photonics, whether it's across networks, inside a data center, inside a server, inside a chip. Eventually, we want to move more and more things to photonics, obviously for the energy saving, for the latency, the speed, and the capacity. So that's the revolution that is really being driven here. And of course, we're starting with the networks because without those, we really can't move on to the next stage. So I just wanted to mention that because many times we're asked what's new and what's different about photonics, and it's really revolutionizing how we do both networking and computing, which we're going to need going into the future. So at this point, we would have had our other guest, but he can't make it, so I'm going to ask our next speaker, Masayoshi Namba from MUFG. I'm sorry if you are surprised, but are you here? Namba-san? Ah, here you are. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to you. Thanks. Come on up. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity for me, and welcome to Futures. My name is Masayoshi Namba from MUFG company, banking company. Yeah. Within the IOWN Global Forum, I have been contributing mainly through the RIM task force and the financial data interconnect team. Today, I'd like to spend about 15 to 20 minutes sharing some insights focusing in particular our activity around financial DCI interconnect. Let me briefly introduce MUFG first. MUFG is a global financial service group operating in more than 50 countries and regions with a strong presence in Asia. Our business span, commercial banking, trusting banking, security service investment banking, credit card, and wealth management. We joined the IOWN Global Forum in 2021. Since then, we have been particularly in discussion around the value of IOWN, bringing perspectives that may differ from those of the traditional IT sector. I'd like to go beyond the MUFG specifically and speak from the more general perspective of financial service providers. Thus, neither MUFG nor my own view can be fully represented in a single simple statement. So please understand today's talk as one perspective based on my experience. Let me start with the first slide. Okay. The financial sector provides two fundamental types of service. First, stock type of service, such as deposit, where reliability is essential. Second, flow service, which accompany commercial transactions, money flow tied to economic activity. For stock service, stability is critical. For flow service, we are required to operate 24/7, 365 days, even during disasters or global instability. At the same time, financial institutions must strictly monitor improper transaction, I mean, including fraud and money laundering. And for global corporate customers, like many of you here today, we are also expected to provide accurate, timely, and high-value information to support your business. When you put it all together, it is natural to imagine financial IT infrastructure as very robust. More precisely, it must satisfy 3 requirements at the same time: security, resilience, and accessibility. Since around 2021, the environment has evolved rapidly. As shown on the slide, generative AI is now emerging as a new foundation. AI is being used for monitoring risk detection and personal proposal for financial sector. It is also enabling seamless service across commercial banking, security, and investment banking, for example. As a result, financial institutions are beginning to offer end-to-end integrated financial services rather than siloed product. Naturally, adding AI capability to IT infrastructure has become a major trend. If AI is fully embedded as intended, the relationship between customer data sovereignty and integrated service may look like this. By the way, sovereignty is very difficult to pronounce for me, and in financial service, sovereignty is the simple meaning of issued by official or such as nation or fidelity. So I say the words data ownership in my slide. Traditionally, customer has been siloed by business entity. Customers select products and build our own portfolio from the industry's side. We try to understand lifestyle and preferences. But today, interactions are heavily digital in digital channel, and it is becoming harder to truly stay close to our customers. Looking forward, I see a future where, starting with AI, we integrated customer data. With clear consent, we can propose products across organizational boundaries as a combination or something packages. I believe this represents in the future. However, this is also a challenge. AI infrastructure is still in heavy investment, and we see a new wave of platform lock-in. IOWN APN has the potential to connect everything seamlessly. But if AI becomes another silo, crossing boundary will create overhead and predictability. Sorry. This is an area where MFG would like to work together with IOWN Global Forum. From network perspective, we can say 2 main challenges. Okay. First, connectivity. Legacy systems often support only limited interfaces, making rich and timely data exchange difficult. AI itself is powerful, but still hard to handle. Model change, unpredictable output, network paths, and data ownership all overlap as challenges. Second, the challenge is geographic one. For resilience, we want backup site far away. Sometimes infrastructure should stay in Japan. Sometimes it should be closer to overseas offices. Even today, treating all the resources as one uniform system is still difficult. To address this, we conducted as a proof of concept POC using an APN testbed network in Osaka, Japan. POC number 1 has already been completed and recognized by the Global Forum. POC number 2 is currently in progress. Regarding POC number 1, POC number 1 examines storage access from application servers located beyond traditional data center distance. In simple terms, we tested whether an application server located far outside the data center could access storage as if it were inside the same data center. From a technical perspective, we connected the network using a standard called fiber channel and intended it over IOWN APN with minimum modification. This enables, for example, sensitive banking data, such as customer information or account data, to remain under the strict data ownership while being accessed by application running on a cloud platform. As a result, we can improve both scalability and resource efficiency. At this stage, however, the rack that contains the storage is not location-free. The main data labeled DC11 on the slide still assumes a physically robust facility. Another key component of POC number 1 is our challenge around remote database replication. Traditionally, when a backup site is located 500 to 600 kilometers away in Japan, replication can only be done asynchronously. This means there will always be a difference between the main database and backup database. We call this difference gray data. If the main site is damaged by disaster, this gray data must be manually reconciled on the backup system. This manual process becomes a major obstacle to rapid recovery. In this POC, we examined whether synchronous replication could be achieved over long distance, or even if replication remains asynchronous, whether the gray data could be reduced to a very small level. At the current stage, we have verified scenarios where the backup service is placed very close to the primary site. However, a fully distributed topology with no clear main or sub site and more than 3 locations will require a different architecture. I will skip the detail of this style, but let me briefly mention the validation range. We conducted experiments from 250 kilometers up to the 2,500 kilometers using a delay emulator. Now let me highlight 3 key results. First, this slide shows application level latency observed over distance. As shown in the legend, we tested multiple levels of concurrency. When storage is in the adjusting rack, synchronization complete in about 5 milliseconds. This becomes a reference point for evaluating delay over the network. Even at 2,500 kilometers, latency remains within about 45 milliseconds. In our assessment, this is a value that is fully practical for real systems. On the right side, you see the result of asynchronous replication because light do not wait for compression. Latency is effectively the same as the sending data to a near rack. In this case, the metric is not latency, but the amount of gray data. Next, this slide shows transaction throughput over distance. As with the previous slide, we test multiple levels of concurrency. Even as distance increase, throughut stay with a stable range, there is no sharp drop-off where throughput collapses. This indicates that synchronous replication is functional correctly. For asynchronous replication, throughput remains stable regardless of distance. When concurrency increases, the data sending process becomes slightly heavier. And in the sample of 300 concurrence produced the best result. Okay. Finally, this slide evaluates gray data for asynchronous replication. We found that within approximately 2,000 kilometers, gray data is limited to about 2,000 transactions. Since the previous slide shows throughput of 50,000 transactions per second, these 2,000 transactions correspond to about 0.05 seconds of processing. In practical terms, this means buffering for only a very short time allows the database to catch up. To summarize these results, even with asynchronous replication, if data is written to the secondary database within around 0.1 second, then in most disaster scenarios, service can continue without noticeable impact to customers. For synchronous replication as well, we obtain value that are clearly within a practical range. As a result, we can expect reduced manual recovery procedures and leaner standby operation and higher overall efficiency. Overall, stable operation is fundamental to trust in banking service. Based on these findings, POC number 2 will explore 2 points. First, distribution across 3 or more locations without a primary-secondary distinction, similar to what virtualization achieves inside a single data center. Second, clear separation between the application layer and the storage layer. For multiple perspectives, I personally find this extremely interesting. For the new SQL database, IOWN APN may become the best possible partner, I think. We may also see the revival of deterministic high reliability system reminiscent of the mainframe era. And for AI system, IOWN APN and IOWN PC, photonic electronic component can act as true boosters. Let me conclude. Supported by our POC results, IOWN APN enables a more integrated financial infrastructure. one that combines seamless cloud, multiple AI platform, and strict data ownership. Finally, this is not only a technical challenge to build the interoperable system that do not propagate failure or malicious traffic. We need trust and collaboration across industries. This is the point I believe is the true value. This is the true value of IOWN Global Forum community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Namba-san. What a great story. I love some of the terms that you came up with, especially location-free, going back to the idea of photonics and converting from electronics to photonics, and at the light speed and the things that you're doing at your company. I used to work with many banks, and I know disaster recovery was always a challenge, and failover. By minimizing that, using an all-photonics network, you've really done a big service to your company, and I'm sure other financial services companies would be interested in this. So great example of a use case between data centers for failover as well as for migration. So well done. Good job. Thank you. Okay, now we have a special guest who I'd like to invite to the stage, Olivia Shen, who is a Director of Strategic Technologies, U.S. Studies Center here at the University of Sydney. So please join me in welcoming Olivia to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, Vito. As you mentioned, my name is Olivia Shen. I'm the Director of Strategic Technologies at the United States Study Center at the University of Sydney. We are an independent think tank exploring the geopolitical dimensions of strategic technologies like AI, quantum, biotech, and space. And in particular, we're interested in that nexus between technology and national security. Now, I am by no means an expert on optical networks and photonics. My background is in artificial intelligence, both as a policymaker and as a product manager. But I am really delighted, and I want to thank the IOWN Global Forum for inviting me here to speak today. Despite being not an expert on photonics, I always enjoy being around people who think deeply about the future, and especially people who are engineering that future into existence. So it is a great honour to be with you today. I've been asked to speak about the geopolitics of AI, data centre development, and what it means for Australia and the broader region. That's a huge topic, and probably more than I can cover in 20 minutes. But perhaps I can start with a local example. About 40 kilometres from here, the largest data centre in the Southern Hemisphere is about to be built in Western Sydney. It's an area I know well. It's actually the area that I grew up in. My parents built a house on what felt like the fringes of civilization at the time, opposite a cow paddock and a very large water tank. Now that area will be home to a $3 billion hyperscaler with total capacity of 504 megawatts. And it will power a digital economy that looks very different to what we had just 20 years ago. As many of our speakers have already said today, artificial intelligence is everything, everywhere, all at once. As a general purpose technology, AI promises to drive an intelligence abundance across a diverse number of domains, from pharmaceuticals to defence, advanced manufacturing to logistics, energy to electronics, mining, resources, etc., etc. And in order to capitalise on the benefits of AI, the build-out of data infrastructure is happening at a breakneck pace. When we talk about AI, cloud computing, or the digital economy in general, I think we tend to fall into a trap of describing them in highly abstract or virtual terms, as if there's some sort of magic that happens in the ether. And yet the reality is that today's most consequential infrastructure could not be more physical. It's made of concrete, steel, transmission lines, cooling systems, batteries, fibre cables, server racks, solar panels and wind turbines, and yes, coal-fired power stations too. It's a complex system of systems, stretching across metropolitan industry zones to the urban fringes and right down into the depths of the ocean. Communications infrastructure, data centres, and the compute that they enable are all part of the essential substrate of our digital age. So it's no surprise that we're witnessing one of the largest infrastructure expansions in modern history. That expansion is global, it's concentrated, and it's sharpening geostrategic competition in unexpected ways. Let's begin with the scale of what's underway. AI fundamentally changes the logic of data infrastructure. Earlier waves of digitization often rewarded virtualization, efficiency, doing more with less physical hardware. AI, however, is notoriously capital, energy, and compute intensive. In the United States alone, hyperscalers are estimated to spend over $360 billion on data center construction. Tech companies are now investing at a scale traditionally associated with national power utilities or energy conglomerates. Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta alone are expected to spend $360 billion on data centers and AI chips this year. They already operate roughly 600 data centers globally, with about 540 either planned or under construction. Despite this amount of investment, projected demand still exceeds supply in nearly every major market. By the end of this decade, global demand for data center capacity is expected to almost triple, with 70% of that demand coming from AI workloads alone, not from traditional enterprise IT or digital services. That's 100 gigawatts of new data center capacity and about $5.2 trillion of new investment needed by the end of the decade. Some of you will be familiar with warnings that data centers as an asset class is an investment bubble waiting to burst. However, there's plenty of signs that the bubble will grow much bigger before it bursts, if it indeed bursts at all. Just yesterday, an ailing shoe company called Allbirds announced that it's pivoting to data centers and neoclouds and will rebrand as Newbirds AI. Allbirds, for those of you who don't know, was founded as a company in New Zealand, specialising in making trainers made of wool. I own a pair of Allbirds. They make fine shoes. But one wonders what a shoe company is doing in this space. Can they build complex digital infrastructure? Well, apparently the market thinks so. Allbirds stock was up 580% at the close of trade yesterday. What we're seeing is a diversification of players entering the market. Some might be more unusual than others, but they're all following market signals. The other trend that we're seeing is the growth diversifying away from traditional hubs like London, Singapore, or Tokyo. These locations now face greater constraints on grid capacity, land shortages, rising energy costs, and planning limits. It now takes an average of 10 to 15 years for new grid connections in London. In Tokyo, grid flexibility has not kept pace with renewables, forcing solar and wind generators to curtail output or risk serious outages. Investors are therefore looking to diversify to secondary markets and new regions like India, Thailand, Gulf states, and the Nordics. The Middle East is seeing the fastest growth rate in data center capacity anywhere in the world. Over the next 2 years, growth rates are expected to exceed 60% per annum, driven by abundant land, competitive power pricing, and strong state backing. Saudi Arabia and UAE in particular are both pushing to become regional data hubs with the construction of gigawatt-scale campuses. The current polar crisis in the Middle East will take some of the wind out of those sails. Indeed, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has openly said that it will target Western data facilities in order to inflict pain on American shareholders. It's likely that fewer new investments will flow. But longer term, it may not change the overall push towards multi-billion-dollar investments into an AI-driven future. Investment is growing too in the Asia-Pacific, albeit at a smaller scale. Asia Pacific is said to become the world's next data center hub, with approximately $800 billion in investment across the region by 2030. Much of this is driven by China, which remains the world's second largest data center market behind the United States, and also accounts for a quarter of global consumption. However, Southeast Asia's data center market is also projected to double in value by the end of the decade. In many parts of the region, growth will be contingent on new capital flows, as well as reforms to provide regulatory certainty and speed up connectivity and power access. This brings us back home to Australia. Australia sits at a structural sweet spot in this globally competitive environment. We are geographically in the Asia-Pacific high-growth area, we are economically integrated into Asia, and we are politically aligned with advanced economies, including, importantly, the economies that dominate the supply of key hardware, like advanced semiconductors. Australia possesses this rare combination of advantages for data infrastructure. On physical assets, Australia has abundant land, abundant renewables, and growing battery capacity. As data centre operators face rising pressures to decarbonise, Australia's energy mix, including its untapped solar and wind potential, increasingly aligns with hyperscalers' sustainability commitments. Then there are the institutional assets, like stable institutions, a transparent legal system, mature financial and infrastructure investment markets, and alignment with Five Eyes partners. Plus, we have clear national security frameworks and regulatory regimes for sensitive data workloads. In an era of geopolitical volatility, predictability becomes a competitive advantage. Australia is leaning in heavily into these data centre opportunities. In 2024, Australia actually ranked second globally, second only to the United States, as the most attractive destination for data centre investment. We currently have about 250 data centres, mostly concentrated around Sydney and Melbourne, accounting for about 2% of grid-supplied energy. That is projected to rise to about 6% by 2030. New South Wales and Victoria are openly vying to be the destination of choice for new data centre construction. The Victorian government has announced plans to leverage land, energy and talent to unlock $25 billion worth of new data centre investment and AI projects. New South Wales, meanwhile, recently announced it would fast-track 15 data centre projects worth a combined total of about $52 billion through its Investment Development Authority. Of course, this data centre boom isn't without its critics and sceptics. There are growing concerns about how much water and electricity it takes to power these data centres. It has prompted the federal government to release national expectations for data centres and AI infrastructure projects. The expectations outline how data centres should contribute to Australia's national interest through clean energy transition, water security, and building workforce and innovation capacity. In particular, it requires that new projects add electricity supply to cover all or part of their usage and to pay for their fair share of network connection costs. Here in New South Wales, the state government is currently conducting an inquiry into data centre impacts on electricity demand, water, noise, housing, jobs, and the environment. Some local councils are also pushing back, arguing that scarce land and other resources should be prioritised for new housing and servicing existing local communities in the middle of a housing crisis. However, there are several reasons why these debates in Australia have not intensified to the level that we see in the United States, where lawmakers are actively debating complete bans on new data centre construction. Firstly, Australia's national electricity rules already require new facilities connected to the grid to pay for infrastructure costs. This reduces the likelihood that such connections will cost increases passed directly onto households. You're not likely to see the kind of 200% increases in wholesale electricity prices that have been seen in some parts of the United States. Secondly, Australian data centres perform well on power usage effectiveness and water usage effectiveness by global standards. The median PUE of Australian data centres sits at about 1.3 compared to a 1.5 global average. And the data centres that I told you about, the one in Western Sydney, it's aiming to use just 100 mils of water for every 1 kilowatt hour of energy consumed by the facility. These metrics are major drivers of data centre investment and increasingly incorporated into procurement decisions as well. Heightened geopolitical instability is also pushing countries towards a greater focus on sovereign and trusted compute. This is why local data centres, sovereign cloud, and classified cloud offerings are becoming strategically important, even if they come at a greater cost. Government and regulated sectors increasingly require local data residency, controlled operational access, and clear national accountabilities. Around the world, countries are trying to establish national strategies for AI sovereignty, especially for government, defence, and critical industries. France, India, Japan, Canada, Singapore, South Korea, among others, all explicitly refer to sovereignty in their national AI strategies or AI programs. Although the precise framing of sovereignty may differ, they all converge on the need for compute and digital infrastructure that nations can independently operate, control, and govern. Sovereignty is not simply about corporate ownership. In complex, globalized technology supply chains, end-to-end domestic ownership is unrealistic, even for the most dominant players. Sovereignty is also not simply about locating facilities within your own borders. Take Ukraine, for example. In 2022, as Russian missiles rained down on Kyiv, Ukraine migrated roughly 150 of its most critical databases and about 15 petabytes of citizen data to commercial cloud platforms. In addition to providing data backups, cloud services hosted in Poland, France, and Estonia allowed agencies and critical sectors to continue to function. In this context, greater sovereignty was afforded through diversification, redundancy, and a layering of partnerships with both commercial vendors and trusted allies. The national security benefits of shoring up digital infrastructure are paired with the economic security gains. Digital infrastructure ultimately underpins the ability to diffuse AI technology across the economy and find a foothold on the AI value chain. Countries that succeed in building this infrastructure don't just attract servers, they attract capital, skills, innovation, advanced industry, and strategic relevance. Countries like Australia are unlikely to develop leading frontier AI models, but with enough access to compute, access that is diversified and secure, it may yet win the marathon for technology adoption. It's clear that digital infrastructure is now a core determinant of economic and strategic advantage. Control over digital infrastructure increasingly shapes control over AI capability itself. The UN had said that companies and countries that dominate infrastructure today may influence the rules, markets, and outcomes of AI for decades to come. The world is building this infrastructure and building it fast. At the same time, we're grappling with questions about who builds it, where, under what rules, and for whose benefit. It very much feels like building the plane as we're flying it. But the other question that comes to mind is how we future-proof some of this infrastructure. We know that many AI use cases will require networks to carry far more data than they do today, and at lower latency. We know that power consumption causes limitations for performance and can damage sensitive hardware. And we have already seen the warning signs that the energy and water intensity of data centres as they're currently built now, if left unchecked, could compromise their social license to operate. What this all points to is that the performance requirements for computing and telecommunications are increasing, and they will increase acutely for those countries that want to be first movers in AI adoption and diffusion. So I think that's a fitting segue to our next panel discussion on why optical networks matter now. Because if optical networks and photonics can provide a pathway to address some of these challenges that we know are looming, then we can better future-proof the investments we make now and really open up what's possible with AI. One of my favourite quotes comes from author William Gibson, who pioneered cyberpunk science fiction. He said that the future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. And I think that quote really gets to the heart of the challenge. How can we help to make the benefits and opportunities of AI more evenly distributed? Thank you.
I want to thank you, Olivia, for joining us here today. Here's a little gift for you. Thank you so much. And I'll have you back up here for the panel, but we're going to bring... so let's have a look here. Thank you. Well, thank you, Olivia, for taking us on an incredible world tour, bringing us around the world and the challenges that we're facing and the opportunities as well. I also love that quote, the future is already here, it's just widely distributed. And so here we are, and I hate to sound like a broken record, how important is photonics to the future of AI infrastructure? So thank you for making that very obvious and clear to us. Please, are we going to bring the chairs up for the panel? Because our next event is the panel. So if you can start bringing the chairs up, I'll try and fill in some time. Yeah, we have a panel, and a guest moderator for the panel is Simon Sharwood. He's the APAC editor for the Register. So if you want to start joining me on the side here, so Simon, Jefferson Wang is from Accenture. Are you here, Jeff? And as well as Olivia, of course. Please join me, and Kawashima-san. And if you could please come get ready to join us on stage. I will give you also a heads up. Giovanni may actually make it, one of the speakers from TPG Telecom. If he's here, please join us on stage for the panel. If he's not here, you will hear from him after the panel with his presentation. We really look forward to seeing him and hope everything's okay. So please, Simon and company, please join us on stage. Jeff, are you here as well? Or maybe Jeff's with Giovanni.
Wherever you want to be.
Jeff? There he is. Okay, thanks. All right, Simon, over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Sharwood. I'm the first journalist in Australia who learned to spell IOWN. I'm a Sydney local, so afterwards, if you want some tips on where to go snorkeling, where to go swimming, where to ride your bike, I'm happy to give some hints. We've got a slightly reduced panel today.
But he's on his way.
So
he'll be here shortly.
So we'll attempt to be agile. Look, I'm keenly aware that most of you probably have a plan to sneak out in about 20 minutes and take a killer selfie down by the Opera House, but we'll try and make this worth your while before you sneak off and do that. So the place I wanted to start today was to, well, what I'd hoped to do was actually be talking to Giovanni about how he feels forum technologies can impact telecoms here in Australia. And I know you're across that, Jeff. Can you maybe speak to that to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think globally, if you look at kind of the revenue base for telecom providers right now, there's a need to kind of find new revenue spaces, and there's a need to kind of lower the actual cost of operations. And certainly this business-to-business opportunity around data centers, around financial services, around all the different industries that you saw presented create those chances. I think operationally, anytime we can infuse more AI into the customer experience, anytime we can infuse AI more into the actual operations side of things, and then ultimately kind of, upsell, cross-sell opportunities, those are all chances. But right now, we're already finding out that these AI opportunities are already outstripping current network technologies. So like one research that Accenture did was 87% of the current network technologies of all of these enterprises is already being outstripped with the current AI demands, not the actual future AI demands. So there's quite a bit of opportunity for telecom providers to kind of support that.
And in the Australian context, it's also important because we're so big. I mean, for those of you who don't understand the demographics and geography of Australia, we have about the population of Greater Los Angeles or Greater New York, but in a landmass 2/3 the size of the continental United States. It's dry and empty out there. But we still have a very high standard for our carriers. And I gather one of the things TPG is looking to is sharing infrastructure with its competitors as a means to protect its margins and protect its profits using forum technologies.
Yeah, I think that when you look at every geography is so different, like you had mentioned, I mean, this landmass, there's populations on the coast and density in kind of the Sydney, Melbourne, all the way to the west of Perth, but there's tremendous land opportunity in the middle. So, you know, the data center example, Olivia, that you had mentioned, if there's an opportunity where you don't have to actually have the data center near the population centers, that changes the entire economic equation of this, right? If you don't need to be near power grids, if you need to be near certain power grids that aren't overstressed, if you need sources of water for cooling, and if you need kind of a network to be able to actually connect that, there's a lot of land in Australia. It's actually an advantage to actually have that kind of land mass.
And I know Kawashima-san has spotted something we're doing about 150 kilometres north in the Hunter Valley.
Pardon?
The project to co-locate data centres with generation capacity in the Hunter Valley.
Down the valley?
Yeah, just north of Sydney.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I've checked the Australian data centers map, and also I've learned that there's 5 or 6 renewable energy zones in New South Wales. So maybe we want to connect the industrial sites in Sydney with green data centers in these 5 or 6 renewable energy zones. That would enable New South Wales people to use GPU computing resources operated with renewable energy. But I think that what we can contribute to this infrastructure with IOWN Global Forum technology is to address the issue how the benefits with such renewable energy operated AI computing resources evenly distributed to industrial users who are concentrated in Sydney area. And IOWN APN would be a good network infrastructure to connect such data centers with industrial places located in Sydney. And as you say, APN is infrastructure that enables people to share infrastructure optically. Sharing infrastructure optically means it does not cause any packet data loss or data delay. So that is a very important feature when people share the connectivity to AI computing resources.
And we're in a fascinating situation here in Sydney. There's an industrial city about 150 kilometres north of here called Newcastle. It's one of the world's great coal provinces, and it's also home to coal-powered electricity generation that is slowing down. So there's extraordinary infrastructure there that could perhaps be repurposed for data centres, and Forum Technologies perhaps make it viable to put those data centres close enough to Sydney in terms of latency, even though they're not in town. So, Olivia, does that sort of thing, help to strengthen sovereign capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you've described is actually really similar to strategies that have been pursued by the UK. So in the United Kingdom, there are quite a number of sort of industrial areas or former industrial zones that have fallen by the wayside because of the offshoring of manufacturing. And now the government's seriously looking back at these places and trying to think of ways to revitalise them by creating them as new tech towns, new data centre hubs, or indeed renewable energy zones. So it is very much about creating that, creating a sovereign capability. And again, I often say sovereign with in quotation marks, because every country needs to have its own assessment of what sovereign looks like to them and how it suits their economy and the nature of its supply chains. But I certainly think we're not going to say no to having more homegrown capability, right? I think that's sort of a no regrets investment in many ways, particularly given sort of the geopolitical environment we're currently in. If we look at just the past couple of months and probably more months ahead, every time we have been struck by a supply chain shock, whether it was in the height of COVID or now in the current fuel crisis, we wonder, why don't we have more of that capability within our own borders, or an ability to have redundancies or diversification strategies? And we tend to think about these things a little bit too late.
Yeah, I also think it's like interesting when you look at kind of the layers of sovereignty like you described, right? And there's a lot of decisions, I think, Simon, need to be made at layers of sovereignty, right? There's the full piece of sovereignty, which is, you know, your data, your compute, your network, and you air gap everything. And then there's decisions around what's critical and important that you want to keep sovereign, but the other parts maybe that are not as critical you could think through. So I mean, there's still a lot of, like you said, that air quotes of sovereignty is super interesting.
Yeah, and like, you know, sovereignty is not binary. It's not a 0 or a 1. It's absolutely on a spectrum. It's on a spectrum where there are very clear trade-offs too that we have to be clear-headed about. Some are going to be trade-offs between efficiency, capacity, or semblance of sovereignty, but and they all come with costs. And who is going to wear those costs as well? And that's probably a much more of a difficult sort of political conversation about who carries the costs for greater sovereignty.
I know that here in Australia, our Department of Defence is comfortable using a captive, probably air-gapped data centre from Amazon Web Services, despite the fact that the Cloud Act means that AWS could conceivably be compelled to share data with the US. So yeah, it's a tricky balance.
And I think also the big providers are trying to think through opportunities around that to make sure that they fulfill Europe's standards versus Australia's standards. And yes, there's the Cloud Act, but there's control points that I think the big providers are thinking about helping with, right? The authentication and the access management of it, the data sharing, like you mentioned. I think that's all, it's live, it's happening right now, trying to evolve so that they can, you know, still help, because that's where a lot of the investment dollars are, whether we like it or not. I mean, there's massive investments in that cloud space from the ecosystem providers, as well as on the AI space from them. So to say full sovereign, as Olivia pointed out, it's super expensive to try and keep up with that investment profile if you're not somehow working with them.
So speaking about the sovereignty, of course, we should consider sovereignty of computing infrastructure and also the sovereignty of data. And one of the feature of IOWN technology is that we can allow to consider the sovereignty, computing infrastructure sovereignty and data sovereignty independently. For example, we may choose to keep our data in our private facility while sharing computing resources on the cloud. So this is one of the important feature of that would be required for sovereign AI. So today, people say data center. Even for a facility to deploy computing servers. But I think this is based on assumption that people are thinking that data and computing resources should be co-located. But in IOWN APN, probably we would have computing center and data center. Probably data center would be located closer to customer's environment, but computing center will be somewhere in renewable energy zone. This kind of flexibility will be realized with IOWN's technology.
I think that's an incredibly powerful benefit when I consider that so much of enterprise data adoption, AI adoption, is sort of stuck in what's commonly termed proof of concept hell. It's like, you know, the capability is there, but there is that reluctance if you're talking about processing your enterprise data, that there is that reluctance or that caution about how am I going to do this at scale for my business without losing my data, without having some sort of leakage of my data off my systems. And so that, I think, is sort of one way we can think about disaggregating the sovereign computing layer from sort of a more sovereign data layer, so you preserve that data control even if you're offloading the compute portion of the workload. And I certainly think, thinking back to my time like being an AI product manager inside government, in terms of government services, you know, the Australian government and the department I was working for holds some of the most sensitive and unique data sets that we have in this country. And it would have been an incredibly difficult task for us to think about scaling up to the way we needed to for some of those use cases.
Do you think that the governance frameworks are ready for disaggregated data centres and compute centres?
I cannot think of any government policy that would stop us from disaggregating data from computing reason. What kind of? I think I cannot think of any government policy that would stop us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think part of it is just awareness that now you have a technology and patterns to make this possible, and then what's the ramifications of that that come up, right? I mean, there's implications on all ends of this that if you can separate it, there's kind of a control factor on the actual data side of things, which you need to think about, but then there's a cost structure on the compute side of things that you need to think about. And if they're all air-gapped on shore, is that the most, economical way to do things? Or, I think the awareness first, and then what are the implications?
Simon, I think there's one technical challenge, because even if we say that this is we have high bandwidth, low latency connectivity so that we can just send the data to the computing resources and process it. But people would think that, computing infrastructure operator may steal their data. So we may say that trust us, but trust is just a matter of humanity. But what we think is, what we have to achieve is zero trust, meaning that without trust, we can be sure that data will not be stolen. This is what we need for trust. I can trust my neighbors because I know that my house is protected with locks. This is the important feature to have trust. So in IOWN Global Forum technology, of course, we can achieve such a system. We can solve the trust issue with security technologies. And this is very important issue that we should solve to disaggregate computing resources and data.
Do you think that the secure multi-tenancy technologies of today are up to the job? I mean, I know AWS uses a network card, a specially designed network card to enforce and increase isolation between workloads on shared infrastructure. Virtualization vendors are all about that. Are they ready for disaggregated facilities?
These are the key technologies, but I think we should ensure that these technologies can work without performance degradation. And for that, typically, the key network transport layer should provide high bandwidth, low latency, zero packet loss data flow. And we can achieve that with IOWN APN. Without that, probably we have to do some kind of TCP/IP-based data communication and so on. And then that would result in severe performance degradation.
And do you think data centers are ready for the incredible torrent of information that can be carried over the APN?
Well, yeah, I think data centers would be ready, and people would be concerned. Typically, one of the issues with today's connectivity services, even if this is technically possible, but in many cases, still carriers' connection services is very expensive. So it doesn't, for many of users, it doesn't make economical sense. But what we do here is that we try to make such solutions economically justifiable. So we do some kind of techno-economic analysis to calculate the total system cost and total system cost of ownership. And here, when we do such study, one of the important aspects of IOWN APN is we can make customers pay for optical transceiver. Actually, optical transceiver is the most expensive component in the infrastructure. But with IOWN APN, we can make customers maybe data center providers or some industrial research organization, they will pay for optical transceiver in order to make AI computing infrastructure. And that would enable the connectivity cost significantly. So I think this is one of the, what I'd like to say is today's challenge is the connectivity cost. But IOWN APN is a new architecture to resolve this connectivity cost issue.
Okay. We've spoken a little about social license. We're going to be building these big data centers and small data centers in all sorts of different places. And hopefully they take advantage of IOWN Global Forum technologies. Olivia, I'm just wondering, do you have an inkling into how data centers can earn and keep social license?
It's a great question. Firstly, though, I was told, and I know we have many people in the audience who are from international companies, I was told that social license is an Australianism.
Ah.
Like, is that true? You've never heard of that, Vito?
Ah.
Maybe define it for everybody.
So let's define that first. Shall we do that first?
Yep.
So social license is basically your social compact as a company, as an institution, whatever organization you would be. It's your compact with the public that you are there. You can be there to make money. That's absolutely fine. But that you are there to do no harm, and that you are ultimately doing more social good than you are harm, I suppose. That's probably, would that be?
In the Australian context, I imagine many of you are aware that we have now banned social media for children under 16.
Great.
We've done that because we've decided that social media, like cigarettes or alcohol, is a dangerous product.
I see.
And that social media companies have lost their social license.
Because they have prioritised their profits over any other over the social harms that they know they are perpetrating against minors.
Yep.
That is the argument. So that's social license for those of our international audiences and our fellow panelists.
No, I understand that.
Now, to your question about how data centre operators can build social license, I have to say that I think the Australian industry has been quite proactive in this, in the sense that we now have an industry body that was established, Data Centres Australia, that was started only a little while ago, because they could see this happening overseas in the United States. Like, they're almost like the US experience has been a little bit of a canary in the coal mine for Australian data centre operators in terms of building that social license, in terms of not deciding to build data centres in the most drought-stricken areas of Australia, in terms of entering into power purchase agreements for renewables, and in terms of committing to more green and more renewable sources of energy. There's also been just a high degree of actual, like to their credit, as I mentioned before, they do genuinely perform quite well on their energy and water efficiency ratings. Some of the Australian companies have invested significantly in R&D to make that possible, including proprietary cooling technologies and the like, and closed loop cooling. So I think credit where credit's due, they have laid a lot of that groundwork. I do wonder if there's also a sense of misinformation, or maybe not misinformation is the right word. Is it mis or disinformation? What's the one that you spread the information because you think it's true, but it's not actually true, but you're not trying to be...
Misinformation.
Is that mis?
Yeah.
Sorry. I always get those confused. Thank you. So there may be a bit of misinformation here because our media landscape is very much dominated by the United States. And I say that as someone working at the United States Study Centre, where it's incredible to me how so many Australians are more engaged in US politics than Australian politics. So they sort
It's fun to watch right now.
I mean, Fun? Is that your word for it?
It's entertaining, I think, for other countries to watch.
It's a little bit PTSD for me every time I open up Truth Social. But it does mean that we sort of kind of have a tendency to overlay the American experience onto the Australian environment in a way that isn't entirely warranted. So I do wonder if there's a little bit of that happening, but also we've seen a little bit of this misinformation for renewables writ large, right? Like, you know, there are still people who are suing wind farm operators. There's some really tense grassroots campaigns against wind farms in prime agricultural land in certain parts of Australia. It's been a really interesting evolution about how we talk about renewable energy in this country that is now feeding into, I think, some of the questions around data centres.
Yeah.
But I think there is another aspect of the social licence piece, which is that Australians, multiple surveys have demonstrated this, that Australians continue to be incredibly sceptical about AI, about the productivity benefits of AI. And it's sort of a chicken and egg problem, right? Can you counteract that cynicism by demonstrating the benefits of AI, or do you need to demonstrate the benefits of, do you need to adopt more AI to counter that criticism? Like, it should be a virtuous cycle rather than a corrosive downward spiral.
Okay. I've been told Giovanni from TPG is here and is about to speak. So let's very quickly wrap things up with a quick prediction from each of you. What do you think the IOWN Global Forum Technologies' biggest impact will have been in 5 years?
Well, yeah, I think the biggest impact is the many nations start building sovereign AI infrastructure.
Okay.
And that sovereign AI infrastructure would be built in a way such that data center operators and AI-related technologies companies maintain social licenses because they contribute to the growth of regional economy.
Okay.
And in this trend, the IOWN Global Forum's network technologies becomes the essential element of the infrastructure. That would be the biggest impact.
Okay, Jeff?
I think the thesis would be AI is going to happen, but it can be inhibited by the network. So as a result, we have to actually modernize the network and keep up with kind of the AI innovation that's happening. And that becomes the foundation to be able to do much more than just data centers, because that's still at the infrastructure layer. But how do we actually reinvent all the other industries because we've now enabled that? I do think that it's not just Australia that has skepticism on the ROI of AI. I think globally there's a question on, will there be kind of a dip, not a crash, but a dip, until we actually kind of relaunch and find the ROI off of that, off your CapEx and OpEx. But I think it becomes, mandatory to update these networks and modernize to something that can keep up with it and future-proof it. And I think it becomes the foundation to actually kind of drive this digital core of cloud, edge, data, AI, security off of this network so you can kind of start to reinvent.
Olivia?
I kind of agree with all of that. I think in 5 years' time, we're going to see those bottlenecks, and we're going to see those bottlenecks in a really big way. And so I would anticipate that the most productive thing that IOWN Global Forum can contribute is to demonstrate the art of the possible with a different architecture, with a different way of embedding optical and or networking and photonics into some really critical trends in AI, like synchronous replication of data, like federated learning algorithms, low latency compute on edge devices, VR and AR for really critical sectors like mining, defense sustainment. Sorry, these are just things I wrote down as you two were talking. And also just with higher resolution audio and video and file transfers rather than sort of the text-based transfers that we're used to. We are going to see all of the demand push towards more breakthrough technologies and different ways of doing things.
Cool. Okay, let's give the panellists a big hand for their expertise and their thoughts. And we'll have Giovanni. Thank you all.
just stand and they're going to take a picture of you. And thank you so much. I could have listened to you a lot longer. I was ready to grab a glass of wine and just continue listening to that great conversation. So thank you for that. And I just, like Simon mentioned, Giovanni is here. You guys can... I'll get out of your way. Fantastic. Thank you, Australia, for leading the way on social media. I'm from Canada, and we're now looking at your model to implement as well, and I think a lot of other countries are. So well done. Thank you. All right. We will invite Giovanni. Finally, thank you, Giovanni, for making it. I really, really appreciate you coming all this way. Thank you. Grazie, grazie. Let me get out of the way. I'll leave that with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And first of all, my apologies for having disrupted the agenda for this afternoon. I was just coming here with Pietro and Paolo, two colleagues from Accenture, and I got a call. I had to go back to the office to look at something that was happening. I don't want to disclose anything more, but obviously I had to manage something, but fortunately everything has been resolved. So I thought if it was possible to allow me to come back and to have the opportunity to talk to you. Probably I'm also between you and the wrap-up for the afternoon, so I will try to stick to the 20 minutes, even if I always say, and probably you can understand from my accent, it's very, very tricky when you leave the mic to an Italian. Even the most reserved and the shyest in the country, like me, could be dangerous. Yeah? So I could overrun, but the time is there, so I will try to stick to that. What I want to offer you is a bit the view from a telco, a network operator, in terms of how the needs of our customers and, in essence, the needs from us toward the rest of the industry are changing in time. So what are the challenges that we see as an industry? And probably for those of you that are not living in Australia, you can connect to several of them, but also to give you a little bit more the flavor of what is happening in Australia. I've joined TPG Telecom 4 years ago, exactly 4 years ago, and for me it was the first experience in the country. So let me pretend to have still a bit of fresh eyes, even if on the other side I feel already part of the furniture, so very welcome in the lucky country. So I will go through very quickly through few elements. So as I said, trying to still have a bit of fresh eyes, how do I see structurally Australia, which means what is implicitly and explicitly the demand from our customers. And then from this, talking about something that I want to describe as polarities rather than challenges. Yeah? And I will come back to that in a second, why I try to use a different term. And then to look at this from the perspective, from the angle of TPG Telecom. And last but not least, to see how we embrace the new opportunities in terms of technology and enablers to the market. Yeah. So let me start from the context. So in essence, it's a little bit my surprise when I came to Australia. You could say the market, the telecommunications market, but in general terms, the structure of the demand from customers and the regulatory environment are presenting a country that could be assimilated in part to the US, the vastity of the geography, 75% of the surface of the US, but at the same time, a population that is close to, with all due respect, a mid-sized European country. Yeah? So a huge discrepancy between these two elements. And also, you can imagine what does it mean in terms of topography and topology of the network. Yeah? So when we talk about, for example, data center consolidations, yes, but up to a certain stage, because otherwise the latency that you introduce is still quite prohibitive in terms of the quality of service. So it drives also a cost of production that potentially is higher than in other realities. Customers are living in highly urbanized areas, so almost 90% of the population is residing in the urban areas, which again drives a demand that is very concentrated and then has also very high expectations. And I will come back to this in a second moment. But on the other side, all the attention to the regional and remote communities as well, that is particularly evident at this stage in the public perception. And last but not least, a regulatory environment that for me is very familiar, having worked for so many years in Europe, where I see, in essence, regulations here that are resonating very well with European regulations, so quite tight, to say the least. So in essence, you could say that this beautiful country, in essence, is wrapping up three different dimensions: a geographical dimension like a huge country, similar, for example, to the US or Canada, a European style to regulate the market, and the very high demand from the customers as well. Based on that, the reason why I'm talking about polarities and not challenges, because in my translation of the term challenge, I presume that a challenge can be addressed, not just faced, can be addressed and can be fixed. Yeah? While polarities are always something that you need to consider, and you need to understand the right balance for you. Where should you find your center position? Yeah? And trying to simplify what we face as a telecommunication operator, I would say there are at least 5 dimensions of that. The first one, as we know, very often our industry is identified as so-called high capex intensity. Yeah? So in essence, there is a huge demand to invest in always the next technology. But at the same time, the pressure of the cost of living is evident in our customers. So we are between a rock and a hard place. Should we pass the cost of this new investment to the consumer, yes or not, and all the tensions that are coming from this. The second, and unfortunately recent events in the country have in some way demonstrated some concern on emergency services. There is I would say, a huge expectation in terms of support to critical services, and rightfully it's so. But on the other side, our industry is not defined as critical in terms of infrastructure, so it's not equivalent to the power suppliers, for example, in the country. So we live again between these two polarities. The competition, and again, without highlighting anything new, coming to Australia, it's evident that Australia is the unique case where the government decided decades ago to go for a national broadband network, yeah? And clearly, they are wholesaling services, but in some segments, they are also directly competing with the network operators. And on the other side, there is also an incumbent, an ex-monopolist that is quite formidable. So for the second player and the third player in the market, it's becoming even more difficult to compete. And due to that, we also have taken some radical decisions on some of our assets. Regulatory, I was already mentioning before, definitely. Australia is at the forefront in some areas. On Monday, I will be in Canberra in front of the Senate Commission for a hearing around the universal outdoor mobile obligation. So there is a bill that is going to be discussed that will impose us to cover 100% of the geography of the country. This is the first case in the world. And again, the cost that these, even if obviously the LEOSat technology is supporting from this perspective, but is still immature, as you can imagine, is an extra burden. And last but not least, you could say as a technologist, I'm facing, and you are facing, the usual dilemma between the speed of innovation on one side, but on the other side, the fact that this could be risky, and maybe sometimes it's better to wait and to see if somebody else is braver, and then to be second and to leapfrog. So again, a big polarity. So all of these, I hope, is giving sense of what is the structural complexity for a network operator in Australia. TPG Telecom, just a few seconds. Probably you know more, especially for the colleagues that are coming from abroad, some of our logos, or one in particular, rather than TPG Telecom, because TPG Telecom is the result of multiple mergers and acquisitions. From a mobile side, the most important was the merger between Vodafone and Three, or Hutchinson, Australia. So that became Vodafone Hutchinson, and for a while they operated under the Vodafone brand in the country. So we are still having a vast majority of our customers with the Vodafone brand. And by the way, obviously, we are allowed to progress on that. Vodafone is one of our shareholders. We have other brands that are local brands, including the TPG brand that vice versa brought us all the fixed broadband assets as well, plus minor brands or very new brands that in the meantime we have also launched, like Felix Mobile, addressing different targets in the market. Yeah? So similar to other operators for some reasons, but however, going through a phase of rationalization in terms of brands. So 2 years ago, for example, we had more than double compared to what you see on the chart today. We are the second largest telco in the fixed broadband space, and we are the third in mobile. Very often we are labeled as the third in the market, but in reality we forget about our second position in the fixed broadband, which is also very relevant. We proudly say that we are also one of the best employers in the country. Number 22 is not in the telco industry, is in absolute terms in the country, and absolutely the first in the telco industry. And our position has become more and more healthy from a financial perspective, especially thanks to the transformations that we have done in the last 12 months. To quickly wrap up and to tell you what are the challenges, but also the opportunities and the enablers that we want to embrace, our strategy as a company is focused on 5 pillars. And some of you could say, nothing new under the sun, because at the end of the day, you are talking about network, you are talking about the factory of your products and services, you talk about brands and product portfolio, you are talking about customers, obviously, and last but not least, you are talking about the structure of the company. So the fact that we want to be nimble, fast, simple, but also stronger in terms of the fundamentals. And last but not least, something that we value a lot, and is not just a slogan, is around a culture that is becoming more and more customer and people-centric. So how the technology function that I represent is supporting this? The beauty and the challenge of TPG Telecom is the realization that a few years ago, after the merger between Vodafone Hutchinson Australia and the TPG, the pre-existing TPG group, was that we were in a strategic quadrant that was very difficult to operate with. So we set up a number of large transformations with the well-known challenge that all those transformations had to run in parallel, which is, frankly speaking, in my experience, the first time I had to face it. So before, I was going from one transformation to another, sometimes in the network space, sometimes in the IT space or the infrastructural space, but one at a time. We had to take the tough decision to move fast in parallel, and very often I use the analogy of controlling many jumbo jets that are in flight at the same time. And by the way, you need to plan very carefully when you can take off, and you need to plan very carefully when you can land them on the ground at completion of the activities. So here there is a snapshot. The last message, because I'm already overrunning, is the fact that obviously we are embracing AI, but you see in the chart AI is 1 out of 12 of the enablers that we see from a technology perspective. So it's not the only one, and in order to do it right, you need a lot in terms of foundational elements before addressing the AI opportunity. So it's not just enough wrapping up technology solutions, systems, processes, but it really needs a transformation that is deep at the core. Some of these transformations have already been completed. Others are just in flight and have to be completed. We are taking off AI now in a different way. So far it was very organic as an approach, and now we are moving to a more structured approach in terms of discipline, how we want to do. All of this is bringing us to the realization that our offering to the market is moving from pure connectivity, because differently from other telcos, we never embraced the ambition to become a techco, for example, but we wanted to stay close to our core and to our DNA as a connectivity provider. But now it's clear that with the AI advent, especially for our customers, we need to move to an outcome-based solution and offering. So I rushed a lot. Clearly, I could have spent hours to go through each of the building blocks. I hope I gave you a very quick snapshot. And again, thank you so much for having allowed me to come on stage later than expected this afternoon. Thank you.
Mille grazie. I have this for you. I don't know if we're taking a picture or not, but thank you for making it all the way over here.
Thank you so much.
I know it's put a little bit more stress on you,
No
so I really
worries.
appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
And the team, do we want to get a picture here?
You want to take
Dove sei in Italia? Dove sei?
Milano.
Milano, abruzzese.
Ah, fantastic. The accent is very visible.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Grazie,
Thank you.
grazie,
Bye-bye.
grazie. Okay, so we wrap up on a high note there with the great insights from Giovanni into his business and into his opportunities and challenges, or as he calls them, polarities. I like that. I'm going to keep that one in mind. So we covered a lot of ground today. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but starting from the beginning with Kawazoe-san setting the stage about the importance of photonics going into the future, Gonzalo taking us through the use cases for APN and how that's changing industries for the better going forward. We also had Olivia really give us a great. I really would love to have that speech somewhere, by the way. There was just so much information in there. Thank you, Olivia, for giving us those insights into what's happening now and into the future. And also to Namba-san from MUFG, how important APN and all photonics networks are to the financial services industry, both for their customers, but also for security and sovereignty. The panel led by Simon, who definitely managed with fewer people and obviously some great content and speaking. I really appreciated you managing that and really getting some great conversation out of that. And then finally, Giovanni for his points. So I hope with that, everyone agrees that the future is photonic. And we're going to be talking about photonics both in the network and in the data centers for a long time to come. And we hope you'll join us in that journey as part of the IOWN Global Forum, both online, iownGF.org, and at the future events as we hold them all around the world. So with that, I want to invite you to some drinks and some food and entertainment. So please join us, and also the exhibitors down the hall if you want to have a peek at what they're doing as well. I'm sure they'd welcome you there. So with that, thank you, and that's a wrap. Thanks.